Hi, hello, Vanakkam, and welcome to yet another episode on Little's Law YouTube channel. In our last video, we saw about what are HTTP status codes and what are the types of the common HTTP status code classes, and also we saw about the 1XX, that is the informational responses, which are which starts from 10, 100, 101, 102, and 103. So let's now do a quick recap before we continue this session. So we started with what are HTTP status codes. So basically a HTTP status code is a server response to a browser's request. Say for example, when we visit a website, our browser sends a request to the site's server and the server then responds to the browser's request with a 3-digit code, which we commonly call as the HTTP status code. And this HTTP status code comes to us in the response in various situations where while we search for information, while we create a record, while we delete a record, or while we update a record. So it's very important to know what are these HTTP status codes and how to fix it in case if we face any unexpected scenarios. And next we saw about the 1XX informational responses, which is the 100 continue, which indicates that everything so far is okay. And then the 101 switching protocols. Thirdly, we saw about 102 processing response. And finally, in the 1XX, we saw about 103 early hints. So today we are going to see about the 2XXS HTTP status codes, which are the success response. So before we dive in, once again I welcome you all to Little's Law YouTube channel, and if you have not subscribed yet, please do subscribe, like our videos, input your feedbacks, suggestions in the comments section. So let's now start with the 2XX HTTP status codes, and the first to start with is the 200 OK HTTP status code. And the 200 OK HTTP or the success code, the success status response code indicates that the request has succeeded. A 200 response is cacheable by default. And we have one more HTTP response that is cacheable. We'll see that in later. So just remember these 200 response codes are cacheable by default. And the meaning of a success depends on each HTTP request method. And there were various HTTP request method like the get, the post, the put, and the delete. So the success depends on each of these HTTP request method. So let's now see the HTTP request methods and what is a success for each of them. So let's now first start with the get. The get method. When the resource has been fetched and is transmitted in the message body successfully, it shows that the 200 OK success message. And next we have the head, where the representation headers are included in the response without any message body. And the third HTTP request method is post, where the resource describing the result of the action is transmitted in the message body. And fourth, we have the trace HTTP request method, where the message body contains the request message as received by the server. Apart from these four HTTP request methods, we have two other HTTP request methods. They are the put or the delete. And the successful result of these put or delete is often not a 200 OK, but a 204 no content, or a 201 created when the resource is uploaded for the first time. So far we have seen about the 200 OK status response code. In shortly, the response code will be 200 OK. The second 2XX response code is 201 created. The HTTP 201 created success status response code indicates that the request has succeeded and has led to the creation of a resource. The new resource is effectively created before this response is sent back, and the new resource is returned in the body of the message. The location is being either the URL of the request or the content of the location header. The common use case of this status code is as the result of a post request. And the status is going to be 201 created. The third response code is 202 accepted. The 202 accepted response status code indicates that the request has been accepted for processing, but the processing has not been completed. In fact, processing may not have started yet. The request might or might not eventually be acted upon, as it might be disallowed when processing actually takes place. 202 is non-committal, meaning that there is no way for the HTTP to later send an asynchronous response indicating the outcome of processing the request. It is intended for cases where another process or server handles the request or for batch processing. And the status response will be 202 accepted. The fourth HTTP status response code is 203 non-authoritative information. The HTTP 203 non-authoritative information response code status indicates that the request was successful, but the enclosed payload has been modified by a transforming proxy from that of the origin server's 200 OK response. The 203 response is similar to the value 214, meaning transformation applied of the warning header code, which has the additional advantage of being applicable to the responses with any status code. The 203 non-authoritative information is the response of the status of the request, and the fifth one is going to be 204 no content. The HTTP 204 no content success status response code indicates that a request has succeeded, but the client does not need to navigate away from its current page. This might be used, for example, when implementing save and continue editing. In this case, a put request would be used to save the page, and the 204 no content response would be sent to indicate that the editor should not be replaced by some other page. And as we see earlier, the 200 response code is cacheable by default, and again this 204 response code is also cacheable by default. So far we have seen two response codes which are cacheable by default. And the status is going to be 204 no content. The sixth 2XX HTTP status code is 205 reset content. The HTTP 205 reset content response status tells the client to reset the document view. So for example, to clear the content of a form, reset a canvas state, or to refresh the UI. And the status or the response is going to be 205 reset content. The seventh HTTP 2XX response code is 206 partial content. The HTTP 206 partial content success status response code indicates that the request has succeeded and the body contains the requested ranges of data as described in the range header of the request. If there is only one range, the content type of the whole response is set to the type of the document and a content range is provided. If several ranges are sent back, the content type is set to multi-part or byte ranges and each fragment covers one range with content range and content type describing it. And the status response is going to be 206 partial content. The eighth 2XX response code is 207 multi-status. And this conveys information about multiple resources for situations where multiple status codes might be appropriate. The ninth HTTP 2XX HTTP response is 208 already reported, and this is used inside a DAV propstat response element to avoid repeatedly enumerating the internal members of multiple bindings to the same collection. And the last 2XX HTTP status code is 226IM used, and this response comes when the server has fulfilled a GET request for the resource and the response is a representation of the result of one or more instance manipulations applied to the current instance. So these are the 2XX HTTP status codes, and with that we come to an end to this video. I believe this video would be very much useful and is interesting to you. We will meet in another interesting video in our next session. Till then, it's bye bye from Vasant Shanmugam from Little's Law. See you in the next video.